All
Excellent.
right. Excellent. I hope this is
Yeah, it's recording.
working. So welcome, Stacia.
Thank you.
I am super excited to be speaking with you today. Um, as we launch birthing pathways. So we're going to highlight one doula, one member of Ocama Collective per month, about the work that they're doing, who they are, why Ocama, and just anything actually you want to talk about. So an opportunity for our our supporters, members of the community, and whoever is out there listening to get a sense of who are the faces behind this so-called Ocama collective that is doing amazing and transformative work. So welcome.
Thank you and hooray. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me. I'm very excited about this conversation.
So I'm not sure exactly how to introduce you because, as far as I'm concerned, you are this amazing individual who has done so much work in the area of reproductive justice, but outside of that also as well. You are what do you call it? A parent. Um,
I was leaning forward, being like, what am I?
I'm like, how do you actually? Maybe that is the question. How do you
How do I talk
define your parenting? Because I think about that, for example, when you were trying to do like instead of the Mother's Day card, you know you had a very interesting take on a Parents' Day card that'll come up issued on this year.
Mhm. I feel like, yeah, so yes, I am a parent and, you know, I within family, I'm referred to as mother and um, I'm also like a pseudo step grandparent. Um, but I'm not called grandmother, I'm called Poppy to that child or to those children. So, there's a lot of variation in the caring and caregiving and guiding roles that I have. But I do have my own three children, three lovely, beautiful children, who are 14 and 14 and 21. And I feel like when I think about how I describe like what I do, um, I often I think about how it would be understood, and I think about how like the things that I do, I feel like I need to be able to be seen as and feel pride in what I do, both for myself, but also for my family and for my children and for my community. So I feel like community is very much at the heart of all the many hats that I wear. But I usually say something along the lines of that I am a reproductive justice and transformation advocate, that I am about community and I do all the things that I do, center community. I say that I'm a parent. I say that I have studied up until recently. I say that I'm a student. And I say that I work in community health. And I say that I am a doula and parenting support coach. And that's what I often say.
Yes. And can you describe what you what your role is within the Okama Collective? And um, yeah.
Yeah. So Ocama is truly quite near and dear to my heart. I am on the board at Ocama, and I cherish that work. And I've also been a part of the collective, offering doula support and services since 2018. And I was at the founding meeting of Ocama, the first meeting, the community meeting, where we talked and dreamed up the organization and what we would want to have be a part of it and what felt important to everybody who was there. And it was a very, very magical experience to have like a ground up community initiated or like conversation around what would be our ideal organization. And so so I think that is part of the reason why it is so near and dear to me, is because I think understanding that the values and the underlying values and the beliefs that we all wanted to share in that room, that's like, that was the driving force, as opposed to let's create like an agency or an organization and offer this service. It wasn't a service driven, it was a dream driven and a values driven conversation. And so
Mhm.
that really, like, I still meet people who were at that meeting who are like, yeah, that was a magical day. Like it was very, very special, and it's a very special thing to be a part of.
Mhm. No, I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
And as a dreamer, um, one of the things you recently manifested was your master's. Um, Congratulations.
Thank you.
And can you speak a little bit about that? Also, how it aligns with Ocama's value
Mm-hmm.
about what education actually is.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think this was my like sort of foray into graduate school, and I decided to pursue a master's in education. And the stream that I joined was a particular specialized stream that focuses on adult education in community spaces, in community contexts. I definitely entered the program knowing that whatever I did there, I was going to
Mhm.
try to make it about birth work, and I was going to try to make it linked to like what I have learned and dreamed and loved about Ocama. Like, I did know that right when I went in. I think at first I thought it wouldn't be possible, but I think that that was me not understanding what is possible, in a school context. But I definitely went in knowing that that's what I wanted. And so in my studies, I was thinking about, why is Okama so special to me? Like, that was kind of one of the driving, like, I want to study and learn and just deep dive on why
Mhm.
it's so special. And what I landed on was focusing on its leadership, um, and its education. Yeah, so leadership and education. And so my thesis was titled Black Doula Practice, Understanding Black Leadership in Doula Practice. And I did a case study on the Ocama organization, on the Ocama collective, to really like explore, how do we lead? Why do we
Mhm.
lead the way we lead? And what does it mean for us?
So we're going to get into that in a little
Mm.
while. Before that, though, I wanted to know a little bit about your personal relationship with education and your
Mhm.
how you came
Yes,
to
yes,
this
yes.
place.
Yes. Yes. So I actually went into an undergraduate program when I was, I'm gonna say like 18 or 19, I'm not sure, but it was straight out of high school. And I was working two jobs while doing full-time studies. And I quickly burnt out. I actually woke up and couldn't move, actually. That's
Mhm.
what was so stressed that I couldn't move. So that lasted it was so brief, like maybe 8 months, I think. And so that was the end of university for me. I never went back until now. And so quite a number of years later. Um, and this opportunity presented itself in the context of like the pandemic and all kinds of change and upheaval. And when I got into the program, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, like, can I really do this? Because I definitely did not have I did not have a sense of what would it take for me to be like successful in an academia kind of context. And I think that my thoughts were, why don't I stick with what I know? Like, so, sorry, one moment. I just have to answer the front door. Speaking of parenting. Um, okay, there we go. Yeah, I think I wanted to stick with what I know and what I felt like I know and really wanted to like explore was more about along the theme of birth work. And
Mhm.
that felt like that would be the driving force to help me be successful because that's like I really didn't feel like I was going in with like tools and confidence to feel successful um, at all. And so yeah, so it's been a pretty steep learning curve for me. So I entered school not knowing how to write a paper, not knowing how to like study, not knowing how to research in a library, not knowing like a lot of
Mhm.
skills where I was learning as I was beginning.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think you and I share a similar path and that of the blur between our work and academia is there's a blur, and it's very much academia supporting what we already know within our work with what we hear
Yeah.
from other birth workers and other grassroots activists. And
Hmm.
so, um, you
Yeah.
know, so it could be, that what you have set up as being kind of like I don't know if you said intimidating, but like not being able to go into that space, feeling that unsure. And I've heard that from like other people also,
Yeah.
um, staying away from academia, and yet so much of the knowledge is held within our people.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And that's why it was interesting to me to like start to settle in and realize that people were also learning from me, right? So that was something that was not that I wasn't expecting that. I
mhm,
was expecting it to be um, a place where I was not necessarily belonging and going to have to try to fight to keep up. And
mhm,
as it turned out, I ended up being someone who people frequently learned from and someone who showed leadership in many of my courses to others in my cohort, right? Because I have been working and living and doing this work for a
mhm,
very long time. I just didn't see that as something that would be valued in academia kind of context.
mhm. So as we speak about like Black maternal health and higher risk and so forth, and we hear among birth workers the frustration of carrying this knowledge and yet not being in the position of power to really do something about it, or not having the research to support what they are witnessing on the ground. So what
Mhm.
would you say to those people who are hesitating about entering higher education or applying their knowledge
I would say that
in a formal way?
yeah. I would say that we're often surprised where there's a space for us. I mean, I was surprised that there was a space for me there. I was surprised that I did well and that my knowledge was valued. Did I feel like I had to explain it a lot? I did. Of course I did. And I was surprised that people um, that in my courses that many students they didn't know some of the things that we as birth workers talk about all the time. We as reproductive
Mhm,
justice advocates talk about all the time. Um, that's not like a given in terms of people's knowledge base. And so, so as an example, there's a required course that was called diversity in learning. And so you're smiling because you know.
I love how your voice just went down.
Yeah.
Kind of like the
Yes.
silence that we're all familiar with.
Yes, yes. And I really like I read the syllabus and I was like, "Oh, is this the whole course?" Like because I'm not actually joking here because I know that it's a good example. Um, there's a course that some of the readings were from feminist spaces that I was in the late 1990s. And so literally like 30 something years ago, I was
Mhm,
reading some of these like articles. Sorry, 1 second. Hi, do you need my attention? No, oh, okay, thanks.
Bravo for a parenting moment. The child comes as a teenager to come and say hello. I love it.
Right. No matter what.
You did good.
Yeah. So for me, like I mean, I was a fresh-faced baby feminist, in coming of age in the 90s. And that's when I was looking at some of these materials. And then like I was in a cohort with folks who were like considering feminist principles and
Mhm.
justice for the first time. Right. So it's definitely a different conversation because I'm not like that's even when I think about how we are challenged in our work, or how, like, who are our mentors? Who do we learn
Mhm.
from? In
Mhm.
that context, I went in feeling inferior, but realizing that the deeper conversations I was having were not happening as much there as they were in
Mhm.
community with my own colleagues. They're the ones who I get to talk about and debrief, like, what's the
Right.
dream here? Where do we want this to go? What's the ideal
Mhm.
scenario for the people we're supporting out
Yep.
there, right? Like that's where the dreaming and the deeper conversations are happening, as opposed to, oh, I felt like I could never really cut it in academia, and here we are, and oh, I'm still going to be doing anti-racism 101 in a class,
Mhm.
and reading like Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack in a class,
Mhm.
and all
Mhm.
that. So yeah, I think there that I think that what I would say is that we might find ourselves surprised, but I do feel like we need to be there because we have a lot to contribute. And yes, I had a few funny fantasies about taking over academia, and what if all the birth workers I knew were there, and what would we do? Yeah, of course. Of course.
So we're thinking about possible institute of birth workers.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, 100.
Um, so tell us about your research.
So, like, do you want me to talk about like what I did or why I did it?
Let's start with the why, and
Hmm.
then
Okay.
what you found, and then your findings,
Yeah. So the why,
or any way that you want.
yeah, the why is good though. The why, I
What did you do? That's the why.
yeah, the why. This is the why. Well, the why requires me to go like dial it back a little bit, and go back to the feeling of
Mm,
sitting in board meetings with Ocama, and just feeling like, wow, there's a lot of love here. And why do I feel energized after a meeting instead of drained? Everywhere else I have a meeting, I'm drained. And why am I in awe of all of these amazing human beings, but not just like individually, but collectively? And just literally loving leading, like
mm,
loving the leadership, like literally. And then I just thought, wow, this is what I want to spend more time thinking about. And
mm,
so that became like, without really knowing what I was going to call it or do or study, that
mm,
became the whatever that is, that's what I'm going to focus on. I did know that.
mm,
And so you know, so how I started was just every time I got an assignment, I would try to make it about a comic. They were like, they're like, please write, like, please write and consider what would be your theoretical framework. And so I'm learning, of course, what all these things are as I'm going. And I'm like, well, my theoretical framework is clearly a feminist reproductive justice framework. Like, it's like that's what I believe. So it was easy to kind of go along and build like the ideas around. I know that Okama is very, very special. And I know that it's work that's centered in love. And I can't tell if that's too hokey dokey for academia, but I'm still going to do it. And so that became like sort of my basis. And then I started to learn more about the different kinds of research and how you do them and pick out what my interests were. And I landed on a qualitative case study. So I really wanted to, I love the idea of doing a deep dive. I love the idea of talking to people. I didn't really want to do something that was too rigid, and I really, um, I liked learning. I liked learning qualitative approaches. It felt like it
Mm,
was true to me. And I definitely sort of feel like one of my survival tactics for finishing my degree was to stay true to myself, to only like to really seek out the things that felt right, that matched and let my intuition really guided. And that was going to be my path. Yeah. And so
yeah.
I did, yeah, go ahead.
No, I read your thesis in like pretty much in one night, and and I loved it. Right, like it's you write. You're like you're a phenomenal scholar. Like it's
Oh, thank
you
you.
wouldn't think it's someone who's had hasn't been doing this, right,
Mm, mm,
and
mm, mm.
that you're really into it, and yeah. So I
Yeah,
it
I
did
love, I did
it
love
did
it. I
very
did
good.
love doing it. And I also loved, um, I liked the process and I liked
Mhm.
like, I was doing it while working full time in classes full time, working on my thesis full time, and it was an extremely exhausting process. And the first year I did have a scholarship, and then the second year I was just like working all the time. And I definitely had the sense most of the time that, like, wow, like for the students of the world who are not working while they're doing this, like I could really, really get into this. So even as a result of like writing a great thesis and feeling very proud of my work, I still had the sense of, wow, like I really could have done so much more about the collective and a much bigger case study if I had had the time and capacity to
Yeah.
do so. But what I loved the most about doing it was doing the interviews. So I did interviews with each of the board members, and I really loved like getting a chance to sit and chat for like an hour and a half about what people love about this work,
Mhm.
what drives the work, what do they care most about, and like what like talking about leadership. And
Mhm.
it was really, really, truly enjoyable. And it felt very like like a blessing, actually. It felt like
Mhm.
a blessing to
Mhm.
be able to do it. And that's also something that I didn't necessarily think at the beginning that I would be feeling, like I knew I was
Mhm.
excited. I didn't know I was going to feel like, wow, this is fantastic. I could do this. I could do this all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. One
Yeah.
thing that I learned, which something that I haven't been using and no one from the collective really uses, but that you use in your thesis is you describe this as community doulas. And so which is and after like hearing that, I was just like, yes, now that makes sense why Ocama is different from other doula
Mhm.
organizations, from doula
Mhm.
practices, and it's community doula. So can you
Yeah.
explain um,
Yeah.
what you mean by that, and also going to the what your findings are
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
collective?
So I used community doulas to talk about doulas who specifically and intentionally are working within community, and often within our own communities, offering doula support. And that's where we see different models like getting like offering subsidized or free care or more customized care,
Mhm.
sometimes more time than more of like the model that we often are trained with is you finish your training, you set up your private sole practitioner sort of business, and then you set your fees. And maybe you join an agency where the fees are a little
Mhm.
bit more standardized, but generally it's like fee for service. You're on your own and that's how you do it. And then what's different in community is that we have places like Ocama where there's more of a community accountability built in, or there's more of a sense of like, well, this is my community too. And I have a stake in this. It's very different. And so yeah, that was interesting to like make the separation. And then I realized that that is where we can, that's where that's where I saw Ocama landing, right? As community doulas who are leading and
Mhm.
offering a different kind of leadership.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I was just like, oh yes, that's what we
Hmm.
do. And I'm just like, we just we need to update our website.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah. What else?
So, maybe I'll go back to, what I was doing and what I found. Um,
Hmm.
so I did interviews and I also looked at some of the collectives leadership documents, like some of the organizational documents, like the bylaws and the code of conduct, things like that. And I did a document analysis. And then I wrote about what I found from doing all of that. And within my findings, um, what was neat about my findings is that it wasn't, a lot of I read a lot of case study research, as you can imagine, when I was doing this process, and they would write, it would be very factual, and all of my findings were about like kinship and community linkages and motivations for justice and wellness, so that we are very, very invested in mutual support,
Hmm.
that we really care for one another, and I gave examples about that. I think that the part about Okama being so invested in each other's wellness that we're willing to do our work, but do it at the pace that maintains our own wellness, because we are the community that we work with, um,
Hmm.
was probably one of the most sort of special and precious outcomes in it all. And I think that that's where we kind of start to turn like traditional models of leadership on its head, because um, we don't take like our base offerings and say we're going forward no matter what, and this is the pace. We actually take our values and we say we're going forward no matter what with
Yeah.
these values, and that is the pace. And that's a very different way to lead.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so were you able to answer the question why Okama?
Why Ocama for me? Like,
Yeah, yeah, for you and for the collective.
but not,
For like for the people you interviewed as well, like why?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I answered the question why kind of collectively, but I do
mhm,
feel like for me, um, I think that leadership is often talked about in a very like colonial, hierarchical, um, individualistic
mhm,
kind of way. And I think that to be able to offer an example and an opportunity to talk about leadership that is deeply grounded in love and care
mhm,
is an important offering to make. And I
mhm,
do feel that you can still offer something good, create something good, but maintain the authenticity and the integrity in the work. And that
yeah,
feels like like even that in of itself is a pretty big offering. Um, that just, yeah, it just feels like it's so core to like who I am as a person. And so, you know, that I'm all about that intuition and like,
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
that's part of, so that's the wild comma for me.
really.
Yeah, because it trickles down, right? Like I think that if we're well and we can continue to grow and explore and welcome in the energy that we need to be able to do this work well, then that all of that is like further supports the community, right? So that's part of the
Mhm,
reason think at some point I was writing about community as leadership, like the actual development of community with
Mm-hmm.
is leadership.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, no, no, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, I'm looking at your thesis, and I quote it says, the interviews generated four major themes.
Mhm.
Theme one, value-based approaches to client care. Theme two, educating clients and doulas through advocacy work. Theme three, motivation for birth work. And theme four, defining Black leadership. Is there any part of this that you want to elaborate on?
I love how you like have it. You have the themes available, and I'm like, I just finished Two Roots, so I have not looked at it.
I know you're like, I'm, I'm done. I'm
I'm done. I'm such a laborious
like,
mess.
code away. I'm done.
Um, I
You don't
think
have to, but if you want
no, no,
to.
no, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that the section that's like really was almost hard to make it its own theme was the value-based approaches to client care, only
Mhm.
because as I mentioned in it, you know, the application or the use of our values is so interwoven into
Mhm.
at Ocama that it was almost like challenging to like pull it out, like tease it apart. Like it literally is,
Mhm.
it's in everything, it's everywhere.
Mhm.
So it was sort of like an interesting process because again, I still had quite a bit of imposter syndrome the whole time that I was working this. So I still was like, do you think this is a good enough like outcome? Does this is, you know, it's just, you know,
Mhm.
thinking that it needed to be something more, something bigger than
Yeah.
it was kind of thing. Um, which is, you know, which is also like interesting. But yeah, no, I think that that was probably one of the more challenging sections for me to write, just because I had
Yeah.
difficulty teasing it apart. And I think the defining Black leadership, and then really most of what I'm talking about in that section is like how much more I want to do to look at Black leadership with context. It's really that just yeah, because there was so much more to say, right? Like I feel like it was just the
Mhm.
tip of the iceberg, and we're doing so much, and we have so many big dreams in the collective, and yeah, it's a lot. I also really, you know, um, feel like it was interesting to me to like learn how many of us talk about reproductive justice and what it is, but then very seldom do we are we able to see like clear examples of like what it looks like in practice. And so that was also really, really nice for me to like
Mhm.
choose that as my one of my frameworks and then use the Ocama collective as an example, different examples from the collective of like this is what reproductive justice looks like. That was something very special too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And specific to the Canadian experience too,
Yeah.
right? Like it's, and that's, and what's different about your work is you're really connecting it to the Canadian experience. There's a lot going on in the US and so forth. But
Mm.
um,
It's a very
you,
critical time, I think, here in the sense that we're also on that, you know, all those of us who've been working in community, we really do see and know what like inequity looks like and what the harms from systemic you know, violence actually looks
Mhm.
like for the families and the people that we work with. But to see like stuff being contributed in, you know, research that is actually, you know, being seen, so like it's
Mhm.
demonstrated, like here it is, like we now can say that Black people have
Mhm.
twice as high you know, like we can see that now on paper. And I and it's and that was a part of also what I thought about a lot was just like the validation
Mhm.
from academia versus what community has always known for some time and has been waiting for that to be validated so we can just go forward and do our work, right? Like we just get the resources and the things we need to continue to do our works. We've been doing
Mhm.
good work for eons, eons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so as we are dreamers and manifestors, I'm going to ask you, because this conversation wouldn't be complete without, well, what's, where would you like to see Ocama 10 years and 30 years and 50 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
You personally.
I personally am pretty obsessed with Okama's model of care, which I have been for quite some time. One thing that always comes to mind for me is like being able to share it like more so people could see. I do feel like I wrote about Black leadership in this thesis, but I also read a lot about Black leadership in Canada. I still left feeling like, okay, but Black leadership in the birth work context is really different than the other stuff that I read. And so I also feel like, as a dream for Ocama, like it's a very, very special organization. I would love to be able to share what we do with more folks. I really do. And think more about what exactly are the very most impactful elements of the ways that our collective works, and then take those to be able to be looked at and see, like, could this be something that's replicated? Could this be something that, what are the things that we could do with this? Because I do feel like
Mhm.
it's worth looking at that in that
Mhm.
way, in that deeper way.
And
Yeah,
30
yeah.
years from now?
30?
Yeah, 30 years from now, where would you like to see Ocama? Or how, and when you think of Ocama 30 years from now?
Hmm. I kind of I actually really do see like a giant center that has an institute, a birthwork institute attached. I really do. I have for some time really envisioned like an actual center. Maybe there's chapters, but I think that where we sort of support community in a some kind of model or some sort of way where we support community to support itself, so
Mhm.
we're helping with the future birth workers and all of the things that they need, but we're also community, like the community accountability model is not something that I think should ever be lost in the collective. And I think even just collective leadership is, even that's unusual nowadays, right? So like that, just
Mhm.
really thinking about, do we have to have hierarchical structure in order to succeed? Do we have to have, like, there's a lot of questions, lots of questions.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, I do. I see a giant, giant center that spouts out brilliance, knowledge, support, and resources left, right, and center.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I see
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
see
You
it.
see it? Yeah.
So there's the
Yeah. It would
leadership
be so good.
school.
Yes.
There'll
Yes.
be it's a whole
There's,
campus.
oh, that's right.
And
That's all I'm saying.
so yeah.
So much.
Okay. I'm with you. And what about you? What's your wildest dream for yourself?
You know, I'm still on my little path of figuring that out because I'm really just like 2, 3 weeks out of finishing school. And so I'm still just trying to sleep.
So if I hear you correctly, I hear you say rest is your wildest dream. And
That's
just
my
when
wildest dream
feeling
right now.
rested.
Yeah. I'm just trying to rest and catch up. That was a lot of missed sleep over the last like little bit. But yeah, I do really think about the different beyond birth work, like beyond the practical aspects of birth work, but just what birth work itself can offer,
Mhm.
like society, just in terms of like where it is placed in the structure of society. I really believe in the power of birth work quite
You,
substantially.
Can you explain to that for people
Yeah,
who
like I
don't
just
know what that means?
I see the way that as birth workers, especially community birth workers, work. Like we're kind of continuously trying to build community, support ourselves, change systems, highlight things in systems that can be changed. Like it's like a really like multi-purpose type of role, you know? And because as a profession, it really does fall below the radar a lot of the times. There's a lot you can do when like, you know, the micro when you're not under the microscope 24 hours a day, like there's a lot you can do. And so, yeah, I think that's something that I would love to explore more. I think I've shared with you, Hirut, that now that I've learned that academia, I've just I've demystified academia. Now I'm all like, okay, next I'm going to do a PhD.
Yes, yes, you will.
Yeah, it's like it took me a long time to realize that I could handle it. And now I'm all like, okay, let's just get these things happening. But yeah, there's more to
Yeah.
about that.
No, definitely. Of course I see it. It's already it's in the works. It's there. I'm just waiting to check it off. And do a follow-up interview with you in 5 years.
Oh my God.
And then
Yeah.
I'll do a follow-up interview with you in 20 years when we start, with putting the first brick at the institute as well.
Yes,
So
Matt. I'm telling you. Telling you.
I'm booking you. I'm booking you for the
Literally
next 10,
see it
20 years.
flying by. I literally can see it.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. I'm always it's interesting too because I was thinking about the things that I have learned from being a birth worker and the ways that, you know, we're in our jobs and in our roles, whatever we do, and like the limitations that are there, or what we think we should or shouldn't do, the constructs of professionalism and all these things. I just really see how you know, since I became a birth worker, I'm like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to try and help you figure out that thing. Of course I'm going to try and answer that question if I can. Like I don't ignore my own limitations and capacity, but I definitely want people to get what they need in order to like live and live
Mhm,
as good and well
mhm.
as beautifully as they can. Like why would I
Yeah.
want to be a barrier to that? Why would I want to, you know, so there's a lot of lessons and a lot of skills that I've received as,
Mhm, mhm,
and I do feel like it is different than, you know, I did my doula training and I started my own sort of my own thing for a while, but joining Ocama has really taught me more about like how to be a birth worker in community and how to be like a an ally, a comrade, and like how to just keep pushing and keep learning and keep growing and keep like being that foundation so that others and
mhm,
letting others be that foundation for you, right?
mhm.
Yeah, it's been quite the gift.
Absolutely. I could talk to you forever.
I know.
But but this conversation wouldn't be complete without actually two parts. Like one, the actual work that you do with clients. I want to know what kind of services you offer for the clientele, the background, um, and maybe something that you want to share about that. And the second part is you belong to many groups or as social
Yep,
identifiers or whatever you call them. Um, if you want to
yep.
mention that as well, and how you bring that to your work as
Mhm.
well.
Okay, what was the first part though?
So you're doula.
Um,
So like in terms of like the
oh
support
yeah, what
that
do
you
I
provide
do?
to
What do I offer?
families.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I
Remember
offer
that form I had you filled,
yeah,
like
yeah.
trauma-informed, prenatal, postpartum, abortion.
Prenatal, labor and birth, postpartum, fertility. Lately, I've been doing a bit less fertility support. Um, I, you know, just because of my background, tend to work with um, a lot of folks who have kind of different complex histories and needs. mental health challenges and or child protection issues, multiple sources of stress, basically.
Mhm.
And lots of folks from within the Black communities, with the LGBTQ communities and disability communities. I also have a disability. I am part of the queer community. I am Black. I'm also adopted, and I've had quite a few clients who are adopted. And that sort of has been a very special aspect of doing the work, because as an adopted person, sometimes you don't actually know anyone on the planet who is biologically related to you. And so therefore having a child can be a very significant time. Um, and yeah, I think that it makes for a very diverse client base, but I also find that people in community tend to seek me out. So I don't, I tend to work with folks who are looking for a particular type of support. But I also do a lot of mentoring and advocacy work with other doulas and supporting them to learn more about systems and how to navigate that and how to help their clients navigate that. Because I also work in community health in the community health center sector, and I support
Mhm.
a very diverse client base there too with perinatal health promotion. And so, yeah, it's been a very interesting time to do this type of doula work, because I feel like when I started, I thought I was just going to be the standard kind of doula, and I don't know why I thought that, because that doesn't even make sense for me. But um, it was, I think that I've been attending births for a lot longer than I've been a doula, and I started attending births. My first birth, I was 19. So it's been over 30 years. And I didn't know that doulas, like, I didn't know that was a job. People in community just kept asking me to come to their birth. And then it went beyond my friends and family and started to just be people who knew someone I knew. And I just kept going, and I kept supporting and holding space and doing the things. And then one day I just landed on a random webinar. Do you want to know, do you want to be a doula? And I had no idea that that's what that was called. No idea at all. And so, yeah, at about year 20, I took some training. Yeah.
We're so grateful you did.
I'm so grateful I did too, because it so aligned with my activism, right? Like, I've been doing, involved in activism for many, many years, but it was very fascinating that I'd never heard about it as a job or as a role that in society. I just hadn't heard that before.
Yeah. So you've been at this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Why are you still doing it, or like
I,
what's
I
still
you
the
know,
spark?
it is sacred. It is sacred. It is sacred work. That is why I'm still doing it. There's, obviously as doulas, we talk about how lots of folks feel like they're called to this work. Lots of folks feel like um, it's a strong pull to do this kind of work. But for me,
Mhm.
and for me, I feel that, and it does feel sacred. I definitely um have felt like, oh yeah, like getting tired, like like getting tired. But that is not how I feel when I'm doing the work. Like, I really don't feel like that when I'm doing the work. It's
Mhm.
only where I'm supposed to be when I'm doing it. So
Okay. So now you're making me think. I just thought, so I thought I was going to wrap up. But you're making me reflect on, as we're aging in this work, also it's very laborious, and um, our bodies are breaking down on us. And so, what is the care that you see that us care providers, nurturers, doulas need for
yeah.
us, not for the clients, but how do we care for ourselves? What do we need to have in place? Because that doesn't exist. We have this model of care for
Uh,
the clients and all of that,
yeah.
but where's the model on how to care for us?
Yeah, and that, to be honest, I think that the model for how we care for ourselves is something that we have to continuously reinvent, because I do feel like it is, through my own reflective practice that I understand
Mhm.
what I need to be able to do this work, right? So I don't work the same way as a birth worker as I used to work. I could physically handle so much more than I can handle now. But I also feel like I'm offering and bringing something different to the table as someone who um, has much more of a, I don't know, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like, yeah, I'm not sure if I can articulate what that is, but I definitely don't feel like I do birth work the exact same way as I did it when I first started. Um, yeah, I'd have to think about that more as to like why I feel so strongly about that, but I'm not able to articulate it for this purpose.
It's okay to be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. But yeah, no, I do feel like having conversations about how we care for each other and how we support each other, how we back each other up,
Mm,
how we, even just all of that. It's just so important. And I know that for myself, like I have received incredible support and backup from other doulas and lactation consultants at the Ocama Collective. Like
mm,
absolutely just challenging situations with families and clients, and being able to call someone, talk to someone, and have them kind of walk me through, like, okay, so now we're going to check in on you. I've never ever connected with an Okama doula and not had the second conversation right after the conversation about the client where we don't talk about how we both are. And that has organically happened every single time, even on the
mm,
phone that has happened. And that
mm,
is, that is built-in, like, mutual support. That's built-in
mhm,
care. It's a
mhm,
built-in way of working, you know.
mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share with us before
Just
we wrap up?
thank you. Because it's never, every time I talk about anything to do with Okama, I'm always like, it's a different conversation each time. And I always feel quite full up and excited. I always feel like I don't want it to end. But in the beginning, I'm always like, oh, okay, let's do this. But now, here I am. you know, here I am talking about it and be like, oh, we should just hang out and talk some more. So,
I know.
yeah. So thank you for making the space and making it comfortable.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure. I thought we were going to do 20 minutes. I don't know where the clock is. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's 21 minutes, 41
I don't even
minutes.
know. I don't know either.
And, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
because um, I love speaking with you. And I'm so grateful for your research, for, cementing a very important part of um, leadership history within Canada, feminist history, definitely, and Black history, queer history. We don't see ourselves reflected,
Hmm.
and for me, that's always been kind of the struggle in my schooling. It's just like, where are the voices? Where is the, where is the direct, as we counter the Eurocentric way of doing it, but like, how is it that, how can we document what we see so that other people don't have to do what we did and they could just take it and move with it and do whatever it is that they want to do with it. And so for that, I'm very grateful to you for documenting Okama's values and leadership style. And, we do this work as a labor of love, and you're part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. So this was, what did we call ourselves? Birthing pathways.
Birthing pathways.
Birthing pathways. Let me put a stop to the recording if I could figure out how to do it.